It's been 3 months since South Africa joined its fiercest economic rival Nigeria, slipping into recession. It's the second time since 2009. But after growing 2.5% in the second quarter of this year, the South African economy is moving in the right direction. According to official statistics, the agriculture, forestry and fishing industry was the biggest contributor to growth, adding 33.6% to GDP. The mining industry contributed 7% after production for coal, gold and other metal ores increased. After 15 consecutive months of contraction, Nigeria is also limping out of recession, growing almost 0.5% last quarter. That's mostly thanks to a slight rebound in oil prices, but analysts warn there's a lot more work to be done to regain lost ground. Nigeria, which is Africa's most populous nation, needs to maintain growth of around 3% to keep up with its booming population. Controversy over managing their economies has been an issue for the presidents of both countries. Calls for Muhammadu Buhari to resign continue even after he returned from his second round of medical treatment in London in August. Jacob Zuma, meanwhile, survived yet another no-confidence vote last month, the 6th of his presidency, as opposition parties accuse him of corruption. The World Bank predicts both economies will grow around 1% this year. And while the news for now is good, the citizens of both countries will be keeping a close eye on the performance of their economies as they prepare for elections in 2019. Adefemi Akinsanya, TRT World.
Let's focus on South Africa's revival now. Joining me from Johannesburg is Dr. Thanti Mthanti. He's a senior lecturer at the Wits Business School. Dr. Thanti Mthanti, thank you very much for joining us on Money Talks. Some good news there then for the South African economy, but at 2.5% growth, that's still well below the government's growth target, and unemployment remains a huge problem. What more does the government need to do?
Thank you for inviting me to the program. My sense is South Africa is going through a lot of fiscal consolidation now. In simple terms, that means the government is sort of cutting back a bit. But at the same time, the banks are also not extending as much credit to the private sector. The numbers we're seeing currently are mainly because of the primary industries. Both agriculture and mining have bounced up. Agriculture, as you mentioned in your introduction, by 33%. Mining by 3.9%. So that's given us a bit of a boost. But at the same time, the fiscus, I'm sure your listeners have heard South Africa's credit ratings have been cut. The fiscus and the banks have been cutting back. So my suggestion is, what do we need to do to stabilize this growth? Perhaps we need to ease up a little bit on fiscal consolidation and encourage the banks to lend a bit more to the private sector to get that sector going, yeah.
That may be a short-term fix, but in the longer term, I mean, you mentioned there that agriculture is one of the drivers of this latest rebound. Do you think South Africa is a little too reliant on primary industries like agriculture, like mining, for the long-term good of the country?
Yes, and I think that case has been for the last 40 or 50 years. We're mainly producing or selling primary commodities. We've got a little bit of a car industry, but it's mainly assembling and then selling on the cars we've basically assembled. Unless South Africa is a country, it's a middle-income country. And research is pretty clear, as a middle-income country, to transition to high income status, you need to make more goods and services. And currently the economy just has not been doing that. It hasn't been doing that for some time. So the poor growth is not surprising, really. In the 70s, when commodity prices were strong, we had a boom in South Africa. When they crashed in the 80s, we had a bust. In the late 90s, early 2000s, when commodity prices were strong again, we had a boom. They crashed again in the recent past, and we had another bust. So it's a pretty consistent pattern.
Dr. Mthanti, Jacob Zuma is still facing these corruption allegations. Do you think that this ongoing corruption scandal is holding him and his government back from making the tough decisions to really transform the South African economy and to kick it out of that middle income gap that you're describing?
Partially not. I think you've got a lot of vested interests in the economy who wish to maintain the dominance of the primary sectors. And partially those vested interests may not be particularly friendly to the Zuma government, because I think partially what they're saying is they want to industrialize the country a bit more and they want a more inclusive economy. And if that's a threat to the vested interests, I think partially they are reacting to it.
Okay.
So no, I don't think necessarily Jacob Zuma per se is the issue.